Welcome, everybody. All right, so let's get right into the presentation. My name is Jeff Leach. I work for SiriusXM Marine Division. Dan Dickerson is also on the call with SiriusXM Marine. We're both based out of the DC office. And we're pleased to have John Spittle, who's a Garmin Marine Training Specialist, on the call as well.
Thanks, guys, for having me along.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, John. Really appreciate that. And if anybody has any specific questions for John, we're going to give you his email at the end of this webinar, but you can also chat those questions. John's paying attention to the chat. He can either answer them on chat or he can chime in and answer those questions for everyone as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So what makes SiriusXM a little bit different is that it's up-to-date information, graphical weather information directly viewed on your MFD, on your display. And it is a complete coverage from satellite. So this isn't cellular based. For those of you that don't have SiriusXM Weather right now or are on this webinar just because you're exploring the option of potentially adding this, this is not based on cellular networks. This is satellite delivered, and we have service generally up to about 150 to 200 miles offshore in this circle area that is, you're looking at my cursor here, around the United States. Okay, so we're going to start with the basics. This is your home screen, Garmin home screen. Now, if you go to settings, we're going to show you how to find your radio ID. And this is useful not only for new customers, but occasionally as a current customer, you're going to want to find your radio ID. Occasionally you have to call into our support center or our call center, or you just want to send yourself a refresh signal. You need to find your radio ID because that's what identifies your weather receiver. So here's the path. It's fairly straightforward. Again, I showed you in settings, and then you go to system information, and software information. And it's really best to locate the radio ID from the MFD itself. This ensures the receiver is connected and communicated directly to the MFD. In the event that your weather has timed out, and this does happen occasionally, if you leave your weather service dormant and have not used it for a while, and it kind of varies what that while is, in some cases it's a few weeks or it could be longer, and you need to wake your system up, we just simply send it a refresh signal. And to send it a refresh signal, you go to SiriusXM.com/refresh. The directions are super simple. You just need to find your radio ID, plug it in there, and it'll send your unit a wake up signal. And in most cases, that works beautifully for turning you back on if you've been dormant. All right, over to you, Dan.
Okay, so here we are back at the Garmin home screen. Hopefully we've either activated or sent a refresh and got our system going again. If everything's up and running properly, you're going to see several buttons on the charts page of your home screen. The main weather function buttons are precipitation, forecast, sea temperature, sea conditions. However, you can also overlay any of the weather features on your nav chart or on your fishing chart. There is a menu you can get into there to turn on weather features. And then there's this other button called fish mapping, which is kind of new, and we'll touch on that tonight, but we'll also be giving another separate seminar on fish mapping tomorrow night for the fishermen that are listening to us tonight. So going from the home screen, we're going to select the precipitation button for starters. As we go through this seminar, we're kind of going to be using the Garmin preset settings that come up when you hit these buttons. So when you hit the precipitation button, it's going to take you to a mapping screen, going to show you your boat on that screen. And down at the bottom, there'll be a menu button next to the home key. You're going to want to tap that button, and it's going to bring up this weather options menu over on the side. And you'll notice there are two tabs there's a cloud with a lightning bolt, and then there's another tab. The top tab gives you your weather options. And the other thing that you might want to do in addition to checking your ID when you first turn the unit on is check and make sure that the data is starting to come in. And the way that you can do that is by pressing the weather subscription button. So when we tap the weather subscription button, we're going to get this screen. It's going to tell us what package we're subscribed to. Might be marine offshore, might be marine coastal. Kind of depends on what you've subscribed to. And it's going to list the individual weather data elements, and it's going to give a data update time. And then this is a little new. Some of you may have not seen it this way. Older Garmin didn't quite display it this same way. The data update time is the time that we receive the information from our weather supplier. So for example, that top line METARS, meteorological observations, came in at 4 p.m. on the 9th of April when this screenshot was taken. Now that column that says data updated is going to disappear, and then the other column you see to the right is going to show up saying received. So those two columns alternate back and forth. The received column is telling you how old the data is coming into your machine. So that first line of information, the METARS, they are 2 minutes old. So if you're questioning whether the weather information is up to date or not, this is a screen you can go to and look at it. For instance, if I look at my high resolution weather radar that's about the third or fourth line down, it's only 5 minutes old, or actually 0 minutes old. The weather radar, it's all zeros. That means it just came in. That data is very fresh. So this is how your weather subscription page works. Now, going on to the next screen, next slide, the data updates at different rates. It doesn't all come in at the same time. To enable us to put all the data we put down such a small pipe, we have to stagger it. So it's prioritized. Storm radar lightning comes in every 2 to 5 minutes. Your wind and wave information updates about every 20 minutes. And then sea surface temperature updates every 3 hours. Now it comes into the receiver every 20 minutes. So if you just turn your unit on, you shouldn't have to wait that long. But as far as new data coming in, these are the update times. This is how frequently we get new information. And the sea surface temperature information, this is kind of exciting for us this year. It's 3 hours. It used to be 6 hours. And thanks to some new technology changes, we're able to increase that update time down to every 3 hours. Now, we often get asked where our data comes from, and we've partnered with the folks at the TWC, the Weather Channel. They don't provide us with all of the data. It does come in from several different sources, but we send it all to them, and they amalgamate it for us, aggregate it for us. And also, they are responsible for the forecast data that we provide, and they also clean up some of the images, like the radar can have ghost images, so they make sure that all that gets cleaned up so it's a nice, crisp, clear image when it shows up on your boat. So moving on, we're back on the weather page now. We've hit the menu button, we've selected observed layers, and we've turned on our legend. So you'll notice that over on the left-hand side of the screen, it's showing us a display. And if we hit the observed layers button now, this is where we can turn on our individual weather layers. So we've gone to the next screen, we've hit the button, and we have storm turned on. And as you can see, there is precipitation showing up on the screen. Those greens and yellows and reds, that is storm. That is water falling out of the sky happening right there. And you'll also notice that to the right of the storm button, there is another indicator button. There's a submenu for storm because there are some other layers available. So if you tap on the button to the right of the storm button, then it's going to take you to the sub-level and show you, and here you can see I have two things turned on, radar and clouds. There's always a green bar next to what's turned on, and lightning and hurricane is turned off right now. So we're seeing the precipitation, and we're seeing that gray color scheme that you see is cloud image, and there are different levels of gray that indicate the height of the clouds, kind of the thickness of the clouds. So this is the image, and we didn't have any hurricane tracks available to show you today, so I didn't have them turned on in this image. But if we go to the next slide, the other thing about radar that we can do is not only show you current conditions, but we can show you history of what a storm has been doing. So we're back on our primary screen. We're looking at observed layer. We're looking at weather options, observed layers, and you can see we have a loop turned on. So with the loop mode turned on, what that does is it plays a 20-minute loop of what the storm has been doing. So for purposes of this webinar, if you go to the next slide, you'll see the precipitation moved a little bit, and we can see this boat is now got a clear path heading in, whereas before there was a little bit of rain and then it's moving. So that's what the screen's going to look like. This clouds with the loop turned on, it's actually going to move for you. And in the upper corner where the legend is, you'll also see a timestamp. So that will tell you what image you're looking at if you're trying to figure out what's the current precipitation in position information and where it came from. And also you'll notice that in this one I did have the lightning turned on, and you can see the lightning strikes. Those lightning strikes typically appear, the bolts appear on screen if there's been a strike within the last 10 or 15 minutes. So we can see that's where the convective activity causing lightning has occurred.
Okay, as Dan mentioned previously, you can get to any one of these our features via any one of these apps, but for the sake of demonstrative purposes, we're going to go to see temperature next, and we're going to simply just go back to the home screen and click on see temperature icon. And then what you'll see is the drop down, and we want to be in observed layers. We're going to talk about this in just a few minutes. And this is see temperatures. First and foremost, you want to go to the menu button. As John Spittle on the call can attest to, John is the Garmin trainer, by the way, for those of you who missed that. John says the menu button is your friend. And that is so true as it applies to SiriusXM Weather. You always want to go to menu first. It gives you these menu weather options. And then, of course, we're going to observed layers. Next, we're going to click on, under observed layers, sea temperature. So what we're seeing here, and I know we've got a whole host of different kind of people on the call that use their boats in different ways and weather in different ways. So sea temperatures are more than just a fishing tool. Of course, sea temperatures are critical for offshore fishermen and women who want to find those hot spots and those fronts where pelagic fish and bait fish may be aggregating. But they're really pretty critical for cruisers and sailors as well, because the sea temperature, at least on the East Coast, denotes the Gulf Stream. And of course, your current changes drastically as you hit the Gulf Stream, sir. Anybody I know that has done the Newport to Bermuda race or other races runs into the Gulf Stream and is impacted substantially and needs to plan considerably for that route. So again, as I mentioned, you go to menu, see temperatures, you're going to notice a drop-down arrow here. So this is a sub-menu. When you get to that sub-menu and you click on that arrow, and what we're going to do now is we're going to zoom in. So we're zooming in right now off of Cape Canaveral, North Carolina. It looks kind of mushy right here, right? When I say mushy, I mean you don't see a whole lot of break. You're not seeing a big color palette here from the blues all the way to the reds. But watch this. If you take sea temperature again, menu, sea temperature drop down arrow, it allows you to set your upper and lower limits of temperatures. So if you're an angler, or even if you're not an angler, and you want to know exactly what a specific range of temperatures are in the ocean, then you can simply set your lower limit. In this case, it's 83.8. Upper limit is 88.9. Again, this is reflected over here in the legend. And then you'll see a much more defined break here in this area. So you'll see this red here represents, roughly 88.9, almost 90-degree temperatures. And then, of course, the greens are getting lighter and lighter. And as we get towards blue, then it's 83 degrees. If you do see grays on your screen, that's just not within this temperature limit. So another tool here is auto configure. If you click on the auto configure button, and I'm going to go show you the place off of North Carolina on my next slide here. This is after we've hit auto configure. So it's finding the best range of temperatures that will really show you that break. And again, take a look at your legend here. Anything else to add to this, Dan?
No, you got it.
Okay.
My turn. So now we're going to talk about weather stations and buoy information, which was one of the questions we just had in chat asking about buoys. So on the, going back to the main weather page and bringing up the menu observed layers, there's a button called weather stations, and you can see it's green, and we've got these circles showing up on screen with a picture of a sun and a cloud and a cloud. That's telling us just current conditions in those areas. So we've got sunny in one area, cloudy in another, partly cloudy in another. And then offshore, you see a couple little yellow symbols. Those are buoy symbols. So these are all stations that have sensors on board that are transmitting data, and we're able to view that data. So as a quick reference, right now it's set for conditions. And you'll see that next to the weather stations, there's a button for a submenu. So if you click on that button, you get a range of choices. And what this is, these are quick references that you can use. The first one we showed was conditions. Now, for example, if I click on the one that says winds, then what I'm going to see is all of those stations, any station that has a wind sensor on board is going to give me the information just at a glance what's going on. So up by Delaware there, we can see out in the ocean, there's a buoy that has a wind sensor, and it's telling us the wind is 5 knots coming from the east. And then if we look down towards the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, we've got one giving us 11 knots. So it's giving us the speed and the direction of that sensor, the wind at that location. So not only can you look at it at a glance like that, but if you tap on the actual symbol on screen, then you're going to get a pop-up window giving you all the details coming off that sensor. So here we're looking at West Palm Beach. It's giving us, quite a few pieces of information. And then just offshore, there's a buoy giving us some information as well. Now, not all buoys have the same pieces of information. Not all buoys have wind sensors. So you might not get wind information, or it might be broken and not transmitting the wind information at that point. But basically, whatever's available from that location, that's what you're going to get when you click on screen. So next, we're going to talk about weather warnings. Again, we've gone back to our home screen and selected warnings. And to the person that asked the question about layers, right now, if I wanted to, I could have storm turned on, I could have sea surface temperature turned on, I could have the weather stations turned on. There are several layers that you can put on there at the same time. Realistically, the only 2 layers you cannot combine are wave height and sea temperature. And that's because they both use the color of the water to give you a piece of the information. So they can only show you one of those at a time. Almost everything else can be layered on top of each other. Okay, talking about weather warnings. With that turned on, wherever there's an area where there is severe weather occurring and the Coast Guard or the National Weather Service puts out a broadcast warning, a lot of times you'll hear it on the VHF, they basically mark an area using the same marine zone boundaries they use for other forecasts. And they'll shade it in red like that. And then if you tap on it, you'll get that marine warning that'll come up, and across the top of your screen, you'll get a set of buttons. If you tap on the marine warning button, then it's going to bring up the next screen that's going to tell you what the warning is all about. Whether it's a storm or a tornado, when it's due to start, when it's due to stop, all that information is right there at a glance. So that's how the warnings work.
Okay, we're going to stop again for chat session, question session number 2. And let's see.
So question 20 about the settings. Once someone sets up layers, yes, they will stay. Once you've set them up, if you power the unit off, they'll be exactly the same. Also, the buttons on the home screen that we referenced, you can customize all those buttons. So the precipitation button, you might want to use it for storms and sea surface temperatures. On the sea conditions button, you might want to have storms there too, but you also might want wind and wave conditions. You can set up those buttons any way that you want, and each set of buttons will keep the settings that you put on it.
Hey guys, can I also add something too?
Please.
I think within that question, can we add or save more than one template? And that question, the answer is yes. So we could go under fish mapping presets and we can do multiple save to and actually name that also. So if you're in that menu under, it can be on any one of these, precipitation, menu, you can go in and save those presets and name them. So that way you can have multiple layers with those specific presets.
Right. You could have your fishing preset, and you could have your I need to get home quick preset. So several different settings giving you just the weather information that you need at one time.
A couple more questions here. Is there any way to see this information on my boat before I head out? And the answer to that is no, we do not currently have an app. Remember, this is satellite based. So really the key for, those on the call is it's directly on your MFD, not contingent on cell signal or internet or Wi-Fi. And it's right there as you need it, especially if you lose cell signal. And Dan and I live and boat in the Chesapeake, and believe it or not, even in the Chesapeake where I live on the eastern shore on the Chester River, I only get 1 bar of Verizon cell signal where I am. So the warnings that Dan just showed us have saved me more than once now with a pop-up letting me know that there's a storm front coming my way, usually when those cells are popping up in my area. So no, you can't access it anywhere else besides on your MFD display. And then there was one other question. It looks like I have a GXM52. Am I limited with any of this functionality you were going over? Dan, you want to address that?
Yeah, no, the 52 uses all the same, does all the same thing. It just won't do the new stuff that we're going to be talking about at the end of the seminar.
And that would be fish mapping.
Fish mapping,
yep. Andrew asked a question about, is there a manual online? John, can you field that one that can access the study of all the features? Actually, you know what? I can address that one, John. Mm-hmm. We have a whole series beyond a manual. We have a whole series of informational videos. We're going to give you a link to a support email where if you have any specific technical questions, we can answer them for you. And I think between the videos and the tech support, you should be more than covered. John, can you just answer, the basic details about manuals and information that Garmin may have online?
Yes. So all of our owners' manuals are online. So for instance, if you just went into the GXM54 and scroll down on that part of the page, you'll see on the right-hand side, manual for installation and owner's manual. And we also get into it on our chart plotters too. So if you had a GPS map 8616 XSV, you can go into that page on Garmin's website, scroll down on your first page, and on your right-hand side, you'll see manuals. Also remember that our GPS map series has the owner's manual built in to the chart plotter itself. So you can access that right through the chart plotter.
Yeah, and I'll say kudos to Garmin too. If you have an older discontinued chart plotter, you can still type in that chart plotter model number in Google and it'll take you to Garmin's website where you'll see it still listed. It'll say discontinued, but if you scroll down on the page, you can still access the manual.
And those are all available to download on a PDF file.
Great. Last question before we move on here, and great questions, by the way. Keep them coming. Dan, you want to field this one? Your first slide showed satellite coverage in blue. Is this different than what the coverage was 4 years ago? Question mark. We could not get weather in some places in the Sea of Cortez. All you, Dan.
Right. No, the satellite, our satellite footprint has not changed. The Sea of Cortez, you should be able to get signal except right near the mouth of the Sea of Cortez. Basically, if you're rounding Cabo, you're gonna lose signal when you're just south of Cabo, and then as you come back up into the Sea of Cortez, you should be able to pick up signal. It is right on the fringe there, so if your receiver is not, running 100%, you might not get it. But I do have several contacts in the Sea of Cortez that are quite satisfied using SiriusXM right now. But basically, there's a line from about Cabo to Puerto Vallarta, and one side of the line you can get service, and the other side of the line you can't.
All right. Keep the questions coming. We're going to keep moving on. There was one last question about how to access the manual from the chart plotter. We're going to give you John's email at the end of this, our tech support email for Garmin at the end of this, and you can specifically just send an email to them and they will show you exactly how to do that.
And I'll go ahead and type that pathway in right now in the chat.
Oh, great.
How to get
Awesome.
to the owner's manual. So I'm doing that right now.
Thanks, John. All right, moving right along. The next icon we're going to review and the next weather features we're going to review are sea conditions. Again, you can access through any one of these icons, but for all intents and purposes, we're going to go right into sea conditions here. And we're going to talk about first and foremost wave. So again, the path is through the menu. You've got observe layers. You click on wave. You can see wave is illuminated with that green bar on the left-hand side that shows you that it's on. Then we're going to talk about the drop-down feature, so the sub-menu. First and foremost, we're going to talk about wave height. And as Dan mentioned, wave height is a color palette. So this is exactly the reason why you can't overlay wave height and sea surface temperatures at the exact same time, because they're both based on color. So we really want to refer to your legend here. 0 is blue, all the way up to red, 36. Stay way away from that. And also, really, Garmin's made it really easy. You can simply just tap on your screen. In fact, in a lot of cases, you can just tap on your screen and it'll pull up data for you, regardless of what the feature is. So in this particular screen, we are showing a lot of green in this area off of Cape May. This is 8 footers in this area. And as we move the color palette more closer to red, further through yellow, we've got 12.5 footers. So the next option then is wave direction. And in wave direction is denoted by these red arrows. So everybody can see here that the waves are coming out of the south-southeast and they're heading up in this direction with these red arrows. Next is wave period. So now we've overlaid several bits of data here. And wave period obviously is critical, because if you got big waves in a short period, crest to crest, then you could potentially run into some issues and probably make a no-go scenario out of your plans. But in this particular case, we're seeing 5.5 or 5.6 feet of wave height, and then these are the periods. So these lines that are up and down the screen, this is 8.5 second period between wave in this area. Up here, for the sake of example, is 9.8 seconds between wave periods. So useful information about waves offshore. Next, we're going to go again back to the menu, observe layers. We're going to, wave is turned off because it's not illuminated, and we're going to go to wind. All right, wind is one we're going to spend some time on, and we're going to ask questions, have questions asked right after this, because I think wind barbs, generally speaking, tend to confuse people. So I'm going to take this one step at a time. First and foremost, I always say refer to your legend. It's a nice little tool. The smaller bar is 5 knots. The larger bar is 10 knots. And of course, the flag represents 50 knots. So for the sake of example purposes, Dan has incorporated this little weather guy here, and he's showing you where the wind's coming from, the way he is blowing out here. So this wind barb right here is showing 5 knots. And of course, the wind is coming from the southeast. In this particular example, we're showing a longer barb here. So that's 10 knots. And this wind right here is coming directly out of the east. These barbs up here are showing 10 knots and 5 knots. That's 15 in total. And again, they're heading down in this direction, which is the way he's blowing, and that's out of the northeast. All right. Thought we'd pause there quickly to see if there's any questions about wind and wave data, as we tend to get a considerable amount of questions about that. And we're going to look at chat here. And
I'll chime in just a question about the wind in the San Juans for the person that joined late. You do have wind coverage in the San Juans. It was wave direction and wave period that's not available in the San Juans. You have to go, you can pull it off of, the forecasts and off of the buoy sensors that are available, but our overview service of sea conditions is not available in that area.
Dan, field the question, if you would, about the scale on the wave height. Why have a legend all the way to 36 feet? And can you change the scale of the wave height to show better color gradients for lower wave height areas?
Yeah, no, we haven't had too many requests to change that gradient, and you know, the fact that you can click anywhere on screen and pick up the height right away. And as you zoom in, the colors do distinguish themselves a little bit, but nope, no way to adjust that scale.
Dan, talk about the zoom in feature. When you get too close, what happens to various weather features? Can you address that?
Sure. To avoid confusion and weather obscuring the screen, typically at 0.8 nautical miles and lower, or below 0.8 nautical miles, I should say, you will no longer be able to see the weather layers. It's just the way that the system was set up on the Garmin's. So if you're in the middle of a big storm and everything is green, once you zoom in to say a half-mile nautical scale, you won't see it anymore. But at that point, you're basically looking out your window anyway. So that's, we always feel that our weather should be taken from more of a bird's eye point of view. You want the advantage we have is we can show you what's over the horizon, that what you can't see, not what's falling on top of you.
Yep, good one. And last question, Dan, will I get SiriusXM Marine Weather Service going up the Inside Passage to Glacier Bay, Alaska?
You'll only get weather information up as far as Juneau. That's about where our satellite footprint drops out. Beyond Juneau, we don't have coverage.
Great. All right. We are going to move forward. If we missed your question for whatever reason, please let us know. There have been a couple inquiries regarding our video libraries, and we will provide an entire slide dedicated to our resources for all of you at the end of this presentation. So you'll get our YouTube page, our marine library, our website, et cetera, et cetera. All right, moving right along. You're up, Dan. If I could move this to the next, oh, here we go. We'll go ahead and provide that information now. As far as technical questions, we had mentioned that we're going to provide an email, and this is it right here. And we will provide this again. So if you need it now, here it is, marine.training@garmin.com for technical questions, for Garmin specific. And then, of course, if you have SiriusXM technical questions, marine.support@siriusxm.com. All right, moving right along.
So we're back on our main weather page, and we're going to select the surface button. And again, this one and the wave button are interesting. You can see the button's green, but there's nothing showing up on screen. That's because nothing is turned on yet in the submenu. And you'll find this is the case with both surface and wave. There can be times when you say, well, the button, I've got it turned on. How come I'm not seeing anything? Well, that's because you need to go to that submenu. So if we go to the submenu here, now you can see we've got barometric pressure turned on. We've got a green light there, and we're seeing our pressure lines on screen. So we're looking at 1,011 millibars right there. And this is currently showing millibars. You can set it for millibars or inches of mercury, your choice. Basically, this is telling you what the pressure is. And then the next surface pressure feature that is available is surface analysis, which are your warm fronts and your cold fronts. You can see we've got a trough, which is a weaker front that's passing through the area right there. So that's giving you the information. And then the red and blue would be a stationary front. And if you look just to the top of the stationary front, you've got the big letter L. That's telling you that's a low pressure area. So at a glance, you're seeing where the low is. And then we'll get into the further about how you can see where it's moving to in a couple slides from now.
Okay, now we're going to talk about marine zones. This happens to be one of my favorite features, because any of us who have been on the water long enough and who have listened to our weather reports on our VHF radio know how challenging it is to try to understand exactly what zone that garbled voice is talking about. And then it always seems like when it gets to your zone, because it's circular, right? When it gets to your zone, you're spacing out, or somebody's talking to you, or you're interrupted, and you have to listen to the entire cycle again. So with that in mind, we've made it really simple. You simply go again to menu, to observe layers, and then to zones. Zones shows the various NOAA zones as they are outlined, and Garmin has them in these faint bluish turquoise lines all around your chart. So what you do is you simply pick one of these areas. For all intents and purposes, let's just say we pick this area. Then you're going to see this drop-down menu here, and you hit Marine Bulletin. and it pulls up all the information that's relevant to that area. So in this particular case, we've got a synopsis for the Keys and coastal waters from Ocean Reef to dry tortugas. We've got 6 pages of information right at your fingertips for you. So I really like marine zones. I hope that people are accessing this. I know a lot of people are using this currently, but if you're not now, I think that's a useful tool for you. All right, Dan, forecasts are you.
Okay, so next we're going to go to the forecast button. This one's a little different. When you hit the forecast button, what you're typically going to see come up on the next page is the weather options. Once you've hit the menu down at the bottom, the weather options have changed. It no longer says observed layers on the second line. It now says forecast layers. And the next line down is the layer mode says forecast. That second button down is actually a toggle switch. You can toggle back and forth between forecast and observed. So we are on forecast now. And then going down a little further, we also have our legend turned on. So over on the left-hand side, we're seeing our legend and we're seeing the word now. That's telling us what we're looking at on screen is the current conditions. So I'm looking at that earlier weather front we were talking about and that low pressure system, and all the winds and waves looks like they're coming out of the southeast. And in the upper left-hand corner, we've got the cloud with the sun and a right arrow and a left arrow. If we click on the right arrow, the screen is going to change, and now we're looking at 12 hours ahead. So we've seen on screen it's changed just a little bit. The winds have shifted, and the sea height has changed a little bit. We've got 10 footers out there right now. That low pressure has moved down a little bit. So we can kind of see the way the weather is changing. And we can click on that right arrow again. And now we've advanced to 36 hours out. And again, you can see it's starting to tame down a little bit. We got 5-foot waves. That low pressure area is way off down to the southwest now. We've got a warm front coming in. The wave periods at 9-second intervals. So we're starting to get nice rollers. Winds are at 5 knots. A little bit of chop because you've got wind and wave going opposite directions right here. The waves out of the south, the winds out of the west. So you've got a little conflict going on there. That's going to create a little bit of chop. And if we can advance it even further, the longest range that we go out on this computer model forecast is 48 hours. So here you can see it's tamed down even more, 3-foot seas. So those features, they can either be individually advanced to look ahead, or you can turn on the loop feature and just sort of play it in fast motion so you can see how it's changing over the next 48 hours.
All right. So that is most of the features of weather. We didn't go through all of them. If anybody has any specific questions on those, we will open up for chat here for questions here in just a minute. Before we do that, we did want to talk really briefly, like 2 slides, about fish mapping. This is the newest service that SiriusXM offers. Garmin was the first to launch fish mapping end of last summer. Fish mapping, as Dan already mentioned, is its own dedicated icon. It's dedicated specifically for offshore anglers. And it includes all of these features of weather. So it is 8 dedicated layers, fishing specific, which includes sea surface height anomalies, upwellings and downwellings, specific fishing recommendations, 30 meters, so almost 100 feet down what the sea temperatures are, where prominent weed lines are, where sea surface temperature contours are, where plankton concentration contours are, and then we've got sea surface temperature front strengths and plankton front strengths. If anybody is interested in fish mapping, we will do a thorough review of that tomorrow night. You can, again, just go back to the login screen where you sign up for webinars, and that pathway is SiriusXM.com/marine webinars. And again, that's the same time tomorrow night, Thursday evening, and Dan and I will review each one of those features for you, and we'll have questions and answers as well. All right, moving right along. Garmin's current weather receiver is the Garmin GXM 54. It has a whole series of compatible Garmin MFDs that you can find on our website or the Garmin website. The equipment, the current list price, excuse me, of the Garmin GXM54 is $799. SiriusXM, not to be confused with Garmin here, SiriusXM is offering a $100 rebate on that equipment. That is not our equipment, but once you subscribe to SiriusXM, if you fill out the rebate online, we will send you a $100 Visa gift card. This lasts through December 31st, 2020. And Dan and I can tell you personally that quite a few people take advantage of these because we are the ones that see them and approve them on a monthly basis. So we encourage everybody to take advantage of the rebate. Why not put another $100 in your voting dollar wallet, so to speak? And then next is the service. We have a 2-month special offer trial on our coastal tier of service. So that is the mid-tier or the lower tier in Garmin's case of weather service. What it does not allow for is sea surface temperatures further out, and it doesn't allow for the extensive forecasts. But you can find this offer at SiriusXM.com/webinar, and that'll take you to the path of the 2-month trial offer.
So we also don't want to leave out what made SiriusXM great in the first place, SiriusXM Radio. All Garmin weather receivers, and I'm going back to 05 when they first started, all Garmin weather receivers have SiriusXM audio capability. So you can not only get the weather while you're out there, but you can listen to SiriusXM tunes as well. We got, we're up to over 140 channels now of, not all of them commercial free, but a lot of them commercial free listening. It's very easy to hook up to SiriusXM audio. You don't even need a SiriusXM ready stereo. All you need is a system that has an aux input for your tunes. Just like you would plug in an iPod, you could literally plug it right into an amplifier. All of your controls are on your Garmin MFD. There are basically 2 sets of cables coming out of the GXM54. One puts your weather information on your MFD, and the other one is an audio out that goes to the aux in on a stereo. So you put that into the aux in, you tune the stereo to aux mode, not to SXM mode, and you go over to your Garmin on your media page on the Garmin, and you can bring up your SiriusXM tunes and adjust, change channels and adjust volume right from the Garmin MFD. So pricing. With the Garmin, you have the option of 3 packages, the coastal, offshore, and fish mapping packages, running anywhere from $35 a month and up. You can subscribe, you can pay monthly, you can pay quarterly, you can pay semi-annually. There's no contract required. The coastal and offshore packages both include all of our weather information. It's a little misleading in the name, so I always like to point this out. There's not much of a geographic reference between the two. They should have been called good, better, and best in some respects. The coastal package gives you all the weather information as far out as we have data, with one exception, sea surface temperature. On the coastal package, we figure somebody fishing along the coast, we only give you sea surface temperature information up to 20 miles out. If you're an offshore fisherman, you're going to want the offshore package because that's going to give you sea surface temperature out as far as we have data. Actually, it goes beyond our even satellite footprint. So you're going to get the sea surface temperature. You're also going to get those forecasts up to 48 hours out. I did see a question in the chat about a person not getting their forecast information. It could have been the package you were subscribed to. If you were subscribed to Coastal, you wouldn't get that, or you may have an underlying issue. And if you do, I suggest you reach out to SiriusXM, marine.support@SiriusXM.com. So getting back to the packages, we've got a coastal packages, we've got offshore, and then our new fish mapping, which is a superset. It includes all of our weather features, all of our sea surface temperature information, in addition to those new fish mapping features. And then we go to entertainment. The audio portion is an add-on. Not everybody has the audio capability, so we make it a la carte. There are 2 of the most popular packages are called Select and All Access. The difference between those 2 is All Access includes some of the higher tier and some of the extra sports channels and extra feature channels that are not part of the Select package. And then lastly, if you're not boating year-round, you don't have to pay us year-round. We have a suspend plan. So if your boat goes on the hard in the wintertime, you call us up and you can suspend your service. You can even call us up to a month ahead of time and say, you know, this is September 1st. I'm putting the boat away on the 25th. Please suspend my service on the 25th. We can set it up so it'll automatically go into suspend and your billing will stop. And at that time, when you call us to suspend, we're going to ask you the date you want it turned back on. And up to 6 months later, that's the date that the billing is going to restart. And you can send a refresh signal to your unit and get going again. So that's the suspend option. You're also allowed to suspend. Say you have some engine trouble and you know you're not going to be boating for a month or two. You're quite welcome to suspend any time during the year for a shorter period. So getting started is pretty easy. The first thing you're going to need is compatible hardware. And then next, you're going to need to figure out which package is going to be the best for you. And then lastly, you're going to want to get that system activated. You can now go online and activate it yourself. All you'll need is your radio ID number, or you can give us a call at the number 855-796-9847. That's the hotline to our Marine team, and they can get you going as well.
All right, let's go back into chat. I think there may have been a few more questions. I think there may have been a Q&A too. I'm not sure. Looks like somebody may have used that. Again, is this webinar valid for all models of Garmin GPS devices with Sirius service? And the answer to that is yes. However, your current compatible GXM54 list you need to pay attention to if you're buying a new GXM54 weather receiver. Does fish mapping work on a GXM53? The answer to that is no. It has to be the GXM54. Let's see, what else do we see here?
There's been a couple of questions about the cloud cover. Going back to the cloud cover, that information it's very basic. The only time I use it is if I'm fishing and I'm looking for a shady spot. If it's a partly cloudy day and I'm trying to get a little bit of shade, I might find one. That color scheme of light gray to dark gray is very generalized. In my opinion, it's opposite what you would think it would be. The lighter the color, the higher the clouds, or heavier, I would say. And then the edges are darker. So darker means closer to the edge of the system.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other new questions that we haven't already answered. Oh, looks like we got a few more that just popped up. There was a question about trading in units on Garmin, and John, I don't know if you can answer that or not. We did have a trade-in program that SiriusXM and Garmin partnered in to upgrade the GXM 53 to the 54. That has now passed. I think that ended right around the new year, if I'm not mistaken. We will provide the contact information again of SiriusXM and our tech support. There were some questions specifically, Dan, maybe you can address later, about music not sounding good on your units with weather receiver. And again, those are specific questions that we could probably address.
Yeah, if you're having issues, please reach out to marine.support@SiriusXM.com. There was also a question about changing from a coastal package to an offshore package. It's very easy. You might be able to do it online. You can certainly call us to do it, or you can even email marine.support. They're always happy to take care of an upgrade for you as well. And you can upgrade. There is no fee to upgrade from coastal to offshore. There is a $5 charge to downgrade, but a lot of times we waive that charge. So we try to make it as easy as possible. Jeff, there was someone that was asking for the phone number again. If you want to back up one slide.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They can get the phone number.
Oh, there it is, right there.
Yeah, 855-796-9847.
And again, if you have technical questions though, please email us, and I'm going to give that to you here again, one moment. First and foremost, here are the resources that I referenced earlier. So the main website for SiriusXM is SiriusXM.com/marine. We do have a fairly extensive video library that's growing by the day. In fact, by this end of next week, this should have maybe 15 more videos in it. And then of course we have a YouTube channel Additionally, for all you that are into social media, facebook.com/SiriusXM Marine, and at Instagram, it's at SiriusXM_Marine. So please like us, follow us, join us, watch our YouTube channels. And then last but not least, here again are those support contact emails. Feel free to jot these down. And in an event that anything happens that you have specific questions on or need support for, go ahead and email us. Again, specifically for SiriusXM Marine is here, and specifically for Garmin is here.
All right, we had one more question about rebates. Someone bought their system 6 months ago and didn't get around to installing it until now. We realized that installs don't happen right away. The rebate, if you would just again email marine.support and explain to them what happened, and we'll get your rebate processed for you.
Great. Without further ado, I just want to thank again on behalf of all of us at SiriusXM and Garmin, everybody who joined. Really appreciate it. Some phenomenal questions, super interactive. We will stick around for a few more minutes. If you guys do have additional chat questions or somebody has a specific question, we can go and address those. But thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Be well. And join us again for another webinar. Thanks much.